There are scandals, and then there are scandals that refuse to disappear. Years after his death, the name Jeffrey Epstein still triggers debate, outrage, and disbelief. Not just because of his crimes, those were established in court, but because of the world he moved in. Private jets, billionaires, political figures, royal circles, elite universities, global finance. And the deeper investigators looked, a more unsettling one realization became. Epstein wasn't powerful in the traditional sense. He didn't hold elected office. He didn't run a Fortune 500 empire. He wasn't a celebrity. Yet he had access to people who did. That access, and how long it lasted, is what continues to shake public trust. Because this case is no longer just about one man. It's about the systems that allowed him to operate.
The timeline that changed everything. To understand why this story still dominates headlines, you have to reconstruct the timeline. Epstein rose in financial circles in the 1980s and 1990s, presenting himself as a sophisticated money manager, catering to ultra-wealthy clients. He cultivated an image of exclusivity. He surrounded himself with academics, philanthropists, and influential business leaders. By the early 2000s, allegations began surfacing involving misconduct with minors. In 2008, he reached a controversial plea agreement in Florida that resulted in a conviction and a relatively light sentence compared to the severity of the allegations. And here's where the public's confusion begins. After serving that sentence, Epstein returned to elite social circles. He attended events, maintained high-profile contacts, continued traveling. For many observers, that period represents a systemic failure. A convicted offender re-entered environments filled with influence and power and was welcomed. Then came 2019. Federal charges were filed in New York. The case reignited global scrutiny. His arrest triggered renewed examination of flight logs, contacts, financial transactions, and institutional relationships. And when he died in custody, the unanswered questions multiplied. Not just about him, but about everyone around him.
The architecture of power. Epstein's influence appears to have been built less on wealth alone and more on positioning. He played the role of connector. In elite ecosystems, connectors are invaluable. They introduce investors to policymakers, academics to donors, philanthropists to institutions, entrepreneurs to global leaders. Influence thrives in proximity. When high-status individuals attend the same dinners, fund the same foundations, and sit on the same boards, social legitimacy can spread by association. This is not unique to Epstein. History is filled with intermediaries who move between sectors without holding formal authority themselves. But what made this case different was the criminal history. The question that lingers is this: how does someone with that record maintain credibility in elite environments? Some experts suggest reputation inertia. Once someone is embedded in high-level networks, the social proof surrounding them can overpower red flags. Others argue that institutions often rely on informal trust chains. If that person trusts him, he must be fine. And that kind of thinking creates blind spots. Media, from dismissal to relentless focus. There was a time when discussions about Epstein's private island or high-profile guest lists were brushed off as exaggeration. Mainstream coverage was limited. Some outlets reported cautiously. Others avoided the story entirely. After the 2019 arrest, that changed dramatically. The media pivoted from skepticism to saturation. Documentaries were produced, investigative pieces multiplied, court documents were dissected publicly. This shift created an unusual phenomenon. A case that once struggled for attention suddenly became global headline material. But with that attention came another challenge: separating confirmed facts from speculation. In the social media era, information spreads instantly. So do rumors. And the Epstein case became a lightning rod for conspiracy narratives, some grounded in documented evidence, others built on assumption. That mix made it harder for the public to distinguish verified reporting from viral storytelling. Institutional accountability. The broader issue isn't just who knew Epstein. It's how institutions responded, or failed to respond, to warning signs. Banks that handled accounts, universities that accepted donations, political offices that maintained contact. private firms that facilitated transactions. Each layer represents a checkpoint where questions could have been asked more forcefully. Were compliance systems followed? Were reputational risks weighed seriously? Did social influence override ethical caution? Institutional accountability is rarely dramatic. It's procedural, bureaucratic, slow. But when multiple institutions appear to overlook red flags, public trust erodes quickly. And once trust is damaged, rebuilding it becomes exponentially harder. The psychology of elite validation. There's another layer rarely discussed: psychological dynamics. Elite circles are small. Access is limited. Proximity to power can be intoxicating, even for accomplished individuals. Being invited to exclusive events, private gatherings, or high-level discussions reinforces status. When someone positions themselves as a gateway to opportunity, others may tolerate eccentric behavior or ignore discomfort to preserve access. That doesn't excuse wrongdoing, but it helps explain how networks can persist longer than they should.
Americans in public suspicion. One of the most contentious elements in recent years has been document redaction. Authorities argue that redactions protect victims and maintain investigative integrity. Critics argue that excessive redaction shields powerful names from scrutiny. This tension has fueled public suspicion. Transparency is the currency of trust in modern democracies. When documents are partially sealed, even for legitimate reasons, it creates space for doubt. And doubt, once seeded, spreads rapidly. Cultural fallout. Beyond legal outcomes, the Epstein case has reshaped cultural conversations about power. It amplified discussions about wealth and accountability, celebrity proximity, political privilege, institutional oversight. It forced people to reconsider assumptions about how elite environments operate. And perhaps most importantly, it sparked a generational skepticism toward authority. Younger audiences, in particular, now approach power structures with heightened distrust.
The ongoing question. Years later, why does this story still resonate? Because it sits at the intersection of three volatile forces: power, secrecy, trust. When those collide, the fallout is long-lasting. This case is no longer just about criminal charges. It's about whether institutions can convincingly demonstrate that status does not equal immunity. Closing. The Epstein case exposed more than a criminal operation. It exposed vulnerabilities in elite systems. It exposed how reputation can mask reality. It exposed how media narratives can swing from silence to saturation. And it exposed how quickly public trust can fracture. So here's the real question. Has enough changed to prevent something like this from happening again? Or are the same structures still in place, waiting for another crisis to reveal their weaknesses? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want deeper investigative breakdowns on power, influence, and the systems shaping global headlines, subscribe and stay tuned. Because stories like this don't disappear, they evolve.